Herrenvolk, we actually traveled away from Vancouver, which we rarely did. The fields where they actually, where we said they were breeding this strange plant to feed the bees, were actually ginseng fields, which had a strange kind of otherworldly look to them. And there's one scene, a very upsetting scene, where Mulder, Roy Thinnes, and the little girl who plays Mulder's sister get trapped in a massive beehive. Well, we actually used thousands of bees and released them in there with the actors. The theory being that if the queen is not present, they will not sting you. Well, that theory is not entirely correct. And the little girl that played Mulder's sister, Vanessa Morley, actually got stung. And it's actually in the show as you watch. And she was such a trooper. She waited until cut to go, ow! You know, she'd been stung. One of the things we've had fun teasing the audience with is what is the relationship between the cigarette-smoking man and Mulder's mother? It could be he's Mulder's father, it could be he was Samantha's father, or it could be he simply has an affection for the Mulder family. But we simply don't know the answer. The big image in my mind from that episode is the death of X. It had been one of our principles in the X-Files that no one is safe and that even your most beloved character could be killed off. And so in keeping with that principle, we killed X, but not without some personal pain to all of us producers who love the character. But he died heroically, writing the name of his successor in blood in Mulder's apartment hallway. So I thought it was a good way to send him off.
I came to the show as a fan. I watched the very first episode of The X-Files back in 1993 at my home in Virginia. At the time I was making a living writing movie scripts. I was hesitant at first just because I didn't want to move to Los Angeles, but I reconsidered. I'm glad I did because this has been the best job I've ever had. It's a great job. The episode Unruh was an episode I wrote early fourth season on The X-Files. I had read about this guy named Howard Unruh, and he was what modern penologists consider to be the first modern mass murderer. He was a guy right after World War II who came home to his neighborhood in New Jersey and took his German Luger he had stolen off the body of a German soldier in World War II and went around his neighborhood and killed 12 people in 13 minutes. And the name and the word, you know, in German, Unruh, means unrest. I thought, you know, it was too perfect. You can't make that kind of stuff up. The stilts just seemed cool, and I just thought that'd be a neat way to introduce this character. You know, it was one of those things as writers, I mean, we'd come up with this stuff, just sort of spin it off the top of our heads, and then the production people and the director find out just how hard it is to make some of this stuff happen on screen. And in the case of these stilts, they are miserably hard to walk on. So poor Pruitt Taylor Vince is on these things, and in the final episode, he's only on the stilts actually in one shot, one wide shot. And you have to look for it very closely, but in the shot, he was actually cabled with aircraft cable to the ceiling of the set, and then they digitally erased the cable. The rest of the time, it's either a stuntman walking in his place, or it's just a close-up on his face, and he's standing on a bunch of apple boxes. The wonderful thing about being a writer in The X-Files is Chris Carter is a great boss because he gives you as much responsibility as you can handle, which makes it a busy job. We're here every day of the week. But it's definitely something I wouldn't trade, an experience I wouldn't trade for anything.
Home is a story about Mulder and Scully who are investigating the death of a genetically kind of malformed baby in a small town.
Oh my God.
Glenn Morgan and myself wrote the episode. And Glenn has been my partner since, we've known each other since sophomore year of high school. There's a couple of interesting images that we always wanted to put into a show. There was a biography of Charlie Chaplin that we read, and he was in a small town, and he was staying with his family, and one night they said, you know, Charlie, we like you a lot, and we want to show you something that we've never shown anyone. He went upstairs to this bare room, where there's only a cot in the room. And from under the cot, they pulled out this teenager who was only a torso and a head with no arms, no legs. They set him up They started singing and clapping, and this torso started dancing around. And Chaplin was horrified, but we found that story just horrifying and interesting and weird, and we always wanted to put it in the show. To get the effect that she had no arms and legs, that shot was done partly blue screen and partly that her arms were underneath the platform. The network's broadcasting standards gave us an awful time trying to put this show on the air. But I think X-Files was such a hit that people weren't able to shut us down. There was a rumor that, when Congress was debating the V-chip, that they brought up home and saying how this is why we need this chip because of programs like this. In the final scene, the acceptable answer of what Mom and Edgar are doing in the trunk would be that she's comforting him and inspiring him to go off and start a new family. And if you think of anything else they might be doing in the trunk, that's up to you.
Paper Hearts was an episode I wrote mid-season, season 4. It stars the actor Tom Noonan as John Lee Roche, who is without a doubt the baddest dude I've ever written. Evil, evil, black-hearted guy. He is a child kidnapper and murderer.
Not again.
The genesis of the episode came about when I got to thinking about how the bedrock, the cornerstone of the entire series of The X-Files is based on Samantha Mulder being kidnapped by aliens, and how Mulder has believed this for years and years, and what if it wasn't true? The idea for the hearts, the cloth hearts, I hate to say this, I think the original idea that I had was that he took their actual hearts, and then I thought about that for about 5 minutes and said, that's just too gross, and no one wants to see that, especially me.
Take from there and I'll tell you.
There's a scene in the prison basketball court where Mulder makes this beautiful jump shot, and just nothing but net, just swish, it goes right in. And a lot of people wonder, it's the magic of film, how many takes it took for David Duchovny to make that shot. I was not there on the day it happened, but I'm told by the director, Rob Bowman, that it went in on the first take and stunned the crew into silence.
I have your gun, Fox.
The wonderful thing Tom Noonan does in this episode, which is so effective, he plays his role very matter-of-factly. It's so wonderfully understated that it really sends a chill down my spine every time I watch the show.
This movie is made up of 2 separate X-Files episodes done as a 2-parter. The first one called Tunguska, which is after a place in Russia where some kind of cosmic event occurred around the turn of the century. And the second half is called Terma, which is a reference to a fictional town in North Dakota, but also to a buried tablet as referred to in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. There's something that has been brewing from the end of the second season on, which is the idea that this conspiracy to keep a secret the existence of extraterrestrial life is a global and multinational conspiracy, not just an American one. And there is another Cold War afoot, a race to find what may be the cure to an alien virus that's on the planet. Agent Krycek appears in this episode again in a very unexpected manner. And he says something to Mulder in Russian. He curses at him, which leads Mulder to understand that he speaks Russian and could be an ally, somebody who might in fact be of use to him as he travels to the former Soviet Union to find out what in fact lies in the Tunguska Rock.
Open this door! Somebody open this door! Somebody!
The special effects in this movie were very, very difficult to accomplish. This oil, unlike the way we've seen it previously, after spilling or escaping from the rock that imprisons it, turns into a series of oily worms, and those all had to be manufactured by us for a visual effect. The explosion at the wellhead and the oil that comes out of it is all man-made. That's Dave Gauthier, our physical effects supervisor, who has built a wellhead in the middle of a rock quarry and run a pipe to it, and is blasting this oil out 300 feet in the air, which becomes a giant flame when it explodes, which is it's probably one of the best and biggest explosions that we've done on the show. And explosions are always exciting. There's just a lot of tension and excitement that surrounds this kind of effect. This movie is really one where we decided to stretch the limits of our resources. We go to Russia in this episode. We are in Terma, North Dakota. We're in Canada. It moves all over the map, and it is an action piece from beginning to end. And I think that it's a really interesting little piece of the mythology of the X-Files, but really functions as a great suspense thriller.